presents The Bar Exam.
Rule number, stay tuned in to student voice. Remember why you chose to teach, like your school of choice. Don't lose the point. And every student learns differently. Some need more support than others just to work through their senses.
Tuned in the student voice. Remember why you chose to teach, like it's school of choice. Don't lose the point. And every student learns differently. Some need more support than others just to work through their sensories.
So yeah, let's break it down.
Yeah. Stay tuned in to student voice means to me, listen to your students. Try to really pay attention to their needs, their opinions and thoughts are important in the classroom. It's not just about you as a teacher saying, here's how it's going to go. You need to follow these rules and read this book by this date, listen to what they got going on in their lives, and so that could help dictate how you approach teaching each individual student. And that kind of leads into the second part. Every student learns differently. When you learn and really listen to your students, you learn that, it's not a one size fits all type thing. Speaking about their sensories, I've had experience working with young people on the spectrum, autism spectrum. And so thinking about that, it's difficult to know that, because I was working in as a parapro, and as crazy as it sounds, I rarely got to see the IEPs of the students that I work with. And I was working in a special needs, emotionally impaired classroom. And as a parapro, I was like, why am I not getting access to this information about these students that I'm spending all day with? Most of the time it was one-on-one with the young people, but knowing, diagnoses of the young people is important, but also not letting that dictate necessarily how you teach the young person. Having that information is important, but also just knowing the young person and what drives them, what motivates them, what doesn't, what might put them off, what's going on at home. So that's what I mean by stay tuned in to student voice, and just really knowing each individual student as best as you can,
How did you get to know students?
Well, I'm in a different situation. I will say that I've never taught a classroom in a school by myself. So I know that is a very difficult task. As a parapro, we work with smaller groups, and a lot of times individually one-on-one. And so that lends to more opportunities to get to know students when there's smaller groups and you got one-on-one time. So I'll say it again. Teaching a classroom is experience that is, I know, extremely difficult because I've seen it. I've been in the classes with my one-on-ones, so I know how difficult it is. But yeah, I think there needs to be more time for that in school built in, and it just doesn't exist right now. I think that's one of the ways school systems and school buildings can improve, is creating opportunities for teachers and students to have more one-on-one communication time. Not necessarily, not even all right, here, you got to catch up on this. You're behind on this. You got to do X, Y, and Z to get your grade up. Those check-ins are important too, but also oh, where you, oh, Mr. such and such, oh, you from here? Oh, I didn't know you grew up here. Cool. I grew up right down the street. Or are you from, Atlanta? My mom is from Atlanta. Just having those opportunities to get to know each other, I think, doesn't happen enough in schools. It should happen more.
You mentioned like using hip hop as as a way to kind of connect with students. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my first work with young people was, like I said, it was helping them work on their songwriting skills, which then grew into recording them and then helping them with performances and booking shows and helping them find other teen artists on a teen ran record label. All this is at the Neutral Zone. And so it's not a typical classroom setting, granted, but it is still education. They're still learning, probably more so about the music business than something traditionally academic. But once I then got into schools, it was about academics. It was about, you gotta get your grades up, or great job on this test, or it's very rigorously academic. And so what I found was excuse me, using hip hop in a number of ways just made the classroom experiences that much more fun, for one, more impactful, and yeah, I think they got more out of it. So what we did was we had our own self-contained EI, emotionally impaired classroom. And so the young people in there, they expressed that they liked to rap. And so what me and the teacher did was decide, all right, let's put some studio equipment in the classroom. And so when they're, if you may or may not know, I'm sure you do as an educator, but for those that don't know, like the EI classroom is typically some of the more students that need a little bit more attention and support. And so they aren't in other classroom settings typically. For the most part, they're in this one classroom the whole day. In this particular classroom here in Washtenaw County, it was like kids from all over the county that were designated as needing this extra support. Some of the more intense cases came to this particular classroom. So it wasn't just this neighborhood. It was kids from all over were like, go to this classroom because they have the support you need there. And so a lot of teachers don't know how to work with these young people, just to be real. A lot of cases, most cases, unfortunately, these young people who have been designated as emotionally impaired are Black boys. In my time of doing that, from I think 3 years, it was always 90% Black boys in the special needs emotionally impaired class. But we bonded over rap. And so we set up a studio in the classroom. So if they were on top of their behavior, they got to earn studio time. They can go record. If they were on top of their academics, they earned studio time. If they were struggling, they needed to release something, some anger, they can go record. You need to learn your social studies. You need to learn the 3 branches of government. Let's write a rap about it. I ain't gonna hold you up. I don't remember the 3 branches of government rap, but it was really good. I might have to find it. I'll send it to you. But they wrote a rap about the 3 branches of government to learn about it, and so it was a teaching tool. So that's kind of how the number of ways we use hip hop in the classroom.
On the other part, you was like, don't forget why you chose to teach.
Yeah.
School of choice. Don't lose the. You say don't lose the point.
Yep.
Yeah. Explain that to me, man. What was you thinking on that?
That was more just some
wordplay.
Yeah, some wordplay, some rapidy rap stuff. But don't remember why you chose to teach. So I didn't necessarily I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I got into it. Education, I guess, is because like kind of alluding to what your first question. Like, I love hip hop so much, I just wanted to share it with people, young people, in any way I can help them pursue their vision, their dream, whether it is to be a rapper, whether it's to be a producer, a DJ, a manager, a photographer for rappers, or journalist to write about rap. Like, I wanted to help that happen just because I love hip hop that much. So that's why I got into it. That's my why, I guess. So I guess my point was, don't forget your why. Because, you know, at some point, I'm sure it becomes a career. It's a job. It's a paycheck. You know, it's a way to support your family. But once you get to that point, sometimes you lose your why and maybe could potentially lose the passion and lose the love for the young people, you know. So that's all that was. And then school of choice was just a rhyme thing. Like, you know, you choose to be a teacher, but it's kind of like a student that chooses what school they want to go to. Don't lose the point.
It's your team, not your regiment. Lead with benevolence. People are the measurement, so ego keep assessing it. Make every day count, no matter what the level is. Competence, confidence, consistency, they treasure it. Watch what you say. Trust with parents is delicate. Walk and speak the narrative. Students show relatives. Guard your tongue, but the real never embellish it. Inject some joy into their lives and not that sedative. So my first line is, this is your team, not your regiment. I think that in a class, you have to be a facilitator of learning as opposed to looking at it as like a military operation. You have to look at your students as a part of a group where people may have different roles. Like you as a facilitator, you got a different role, and it's not top-down leadership. Lead with benevolence, lead with kindness, lead with understanding, lead with compassion. That kind of wins the long game when it comes to kids. People are the measurement, so ego keep assessing it. So, your success as a teacher is measured by what people end up doing as a result, or partially because of what you do to intervene and where they may be going. So people are the measurement, so ego keep assessing it. Think about how you involve yourself and your selfish needs in terms of dealing with young people, because you have to get beyond yourself. Then I said, make every day count, no matter what the level is, no matter what's happening on a day-to-day basis, no matter what the activity is, no matter what's going on, you have to make it count. We all, as teachers, we had those days where, it's the day before break, or it's the end of the year and things is starting to, you still got to make it count, because it still could make a very important difference in what's happening. And then I said competence, confidence, consistency, they treasure it. So those three things, being competent, understanding what your intentions are, being confident and believing that you can do it, as well as being consistent in terms of the rules and the standards that you have. And those rules and standards don't always necessarily mean rules and standards related to the work or related to what's happening in class, but your consistency as a person, they treasure that. They value that. Watch what you say, trust with parents is delicate. So you still got to remember you working with other people's kids at all times, even when you have those relationships. Walk and speak the narrative. Students are relatives. So my kids are my family still to this day. I got kids that's 35 years old walking around running businesses and all this. They are my family still to this day. And I see them out in the streets. I may not have talked to them in 25 years, and I tell them I love them, I'm proud of them, I don't care what they've been through, they know where to find me, so on and so forth. And you got to walk that. And I think another part of that is, just real quick, I think that we have to make sure we treat children in ways that reflect how we would treat children if they all were our family. Because I think a lot of times we try to separate those things, and I think kids need us most. I think kids need most for us to feel that level of closeness and that unconditional love from us. guard your tongue, but the real never embellish it. You do still have to maintain a standard that says, I know you feel a certain way about this, but I have to give you the truth because it's intended to help you grow, but you got to do it with love. And then inject some joy into their lives and not that sedative. I think we all understand and recognize that there's a certain safety in making sure that our kids don't succeed. And I think by avoiding giving them that that same medicine, so to speak, that says that this is the expectation of you, I think if we could do something above that, we can keep them from living a lie or living asleep. So that was mine.
Respect.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned about the sedative, giving joy and not just that sedative, and so when I was listening to it, I wanted to ask you, like, man, are you referring to the sedative? Like sometimes we sedate especially our young boys. We choose to give them sedation other than to deal with whether it's ADHD symptoms or what.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it can have multiple meanings because, there is an effort to keep our students and keep our young people's expressions kind of muted in a way in the name of, it's not appropriate, or, it's not going to fit into this particular environment. And then you can look at it from a health perspective as well. Because if we don't do what we do, they will definitely be at risk of sedating themselves moving forward. So that's what we're doing.
I got one question for you, Rod. What reaction do you think the educational community will have to your verse? So John Q. teacher, whomever, in wherever city, whatever state, when they hear this, what reaction do you think your verse evokes in them?
I think it's a underlying foundation of leadership in what I'm talking about. And I always say that you have to be a good leader to be a good teacher. You have to be an aware leader to be a good teacher. And you have to lead with relationships. And I think that's what people should take away from it overall. Because without that relationship, and without the fluency to be able to speak the language of the young people, then you'll be lost as a teacher, and they'll recognize you very quickly. So that's what I think people will take away from it.
Why would anyone wanna be a teacher? The highs and lows that grow future leaders. The sparks of flame ignite hidden genius. They see themselves when they see us.
DNA is locked in the coil in kids' hair. The antennas can detect if you really care. You can teach a class but can't be taught passion. Passing the praxis doesn't make you a master. You can get a pass when AI gives you the answer. You get crossed but don't throw a tantrum. Magic when a dim light gets the flash. I need you to destroy the prison pipelines, magnet.
It's on E. Okay. So I opened up with build and destroy. It's kind of faint, but I chose that phrase because I feel that there's a lot of building that is happening in education. It's still slow, but there's a lot of things that need to be destroyed. That's just archaic, and it's just practices that have no fruit from it at all. And just like a small piece, we were talking about AI and like how it's like for some people it's very mystical and hands off, and to other people like I see the benefits. But I was just thinking, I work in elementary school, and we're talking about like what the job force is going to look like when they are 16 years old, and it's not going to be what I had. It's like my first job is going to McDonald's. It's going to be a kiosk there, So just really like preparing our kids, and like how are we viewing an educational experience, not just coming to school, type of situation. But after that, I said how DNA is locked in the coil of kids' hair that antennas can detect if you really care. It's like a thing in the community that some people feel like locks are like an antenna, you know what I'm saying? And I chose that DNA piece too, because like DNA is locked in our hair, and like the relationships that we build, that's something that also can be locked in with us. And I can lock in with you as an educator if I know that you care. But a lot of what I've even checked within myself is like, caring is not just SEL. It's not just, a relationship in terms of I'm a cool guy, you are cool, we can talk this, we can talk shop, but caring is like I'm giving you a high quality educational experience, and I'm not holding back because you're in such and such school or you live in such and such zip code. Like I'm giving you what you deserve, which is a high quality educational experience. And also I care by taking care of myself so that I can care for you. That makes sense. So it's like, the teacher burnout, and all of that stuff. Like when it gets to those points where they're burning out, those relationships get jacked up, because now I'm just going off of emotion and I'm matching power or whatever. You can teach a class but can't be taught passion. Passion, I believe, is something that you just, like, teaching is not just something where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go and be a teacher. Like, you have to, it's like almost in you to do this. Some people know it, some people don't. They grow to know it, but it's something that it's beyond just like, I just like to go to teach. It's like, no, the passion behind it is what keeps you going, because it's a very difficult profession, but also the passion is what the kids feel. I go off of this phrase like electric education. Like when they step into the threshold of your classroom, they should feel that passion. And passion looks different from each person. But I should know, like, I'm in a place where, my teacher is passionate about. So from my teacher's passion, I'm in it. I'm on the edge of my seat, Passing the praxis doesn't make you a master. I've dealt with, or I'll help to assist a lot of educators that felt that they were ready because they passed the exam. But there was so much more that they needed to know. So passing the praxis doesn't make you a master, but it does make you a student. Now that you're the teacher, but I still realize that I'm learning. There's a lot of valuable information that I can bring. There's some valuable information that I still need to learn so that I can be, a master educator. You can get a pass when AI gives you the answer, but don't get crossed. But when you get crossed, don't throw a tantrum. So of course it's like the AI references, Albert Iverson and the shoe, the answer. But what I was doing with that is just like nowadays AI, it's easy to just find answers. It's easy if I just want to get through this course, I can get through it. But when you get crossed, like when you're in a classroom or you have that student, don't throw a tantrum. That's where we go back to the becoming a student again, figuring out how I can resolve or fix or master this situation. I'm in elementary school again. I tell a lot of my educators, we're smarter than a fifth grader. And sometimes it may not feel like we're smarter than a fifth grader, but something's going to work. So when you get crossed, don't throw a tantrum. Don't let the kids see you throwing a tantrum. Like, keep going, Magic when the dim light gets to flashing. That's just a magical piece to me. Like when students, I got it. I think that's the stuff that, I go home and I talk about, like when they get it, that feeling, that's like Christmas time to me. Like when they, I got it. When they were allowed to grapple with a situation to get it and not just giving, there's a lot of time, in our schools, sometimes we just give it and don't let them fight for the answer, so, in the last part, I need you to destroy the prison pipelines magnet. It's a magnet that's pulled in our communities to just give up on those third graders that they starting to track, for those seats in prison, and our males, but not even our males, just our kids. Like, there's just work that we have to do, and we have to see the bigger picture that this third grader, this fifth grader, this ninth grader is not always going to be 14 or 9 or 8, and the things that we are we're in their lives for a specific purpose, and we got to see our purpose in that moment for the long term.
Yeah, I got a question for you. In what you've broken down, what's one part or one line you think people may have missed? Like when you go back through it, like what's one thing we might have to double click on just to make sure they got the meaning?
I think it is. It's probably the AI lines, you know, because it was like a few meanings in those, you know. The AI line, first AI was just somebody that we just watched to see that crossover, you know. And for some, it's crossing over into a new profession. It's crossing over to a new grade. We all got, if we want to talk about cross, we all got cross coming back into education after the pandemic. You know, it's just it's a new game, you know. So yeah, that just the AI references, the artificial intelligence. Yeah, I think that.
Your rhyme was dope. Your verse was dope.
Thank you.
And I think that, going back to what Kente's asking questions about when people are analyzing your rhyme, if they're doing that, I think one of the lines that I analyzed and looking at it from the profession and from the standpoint of a teacher is when you talked about the DNA locked in the kids' hair.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great lesson on pulling the kids into your lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we operating out of a curriculum that doesn't really talk about that, right? So how do you bring kids into a personal space and make it a little bit more personable to them? And then, especially our kids rocking the locks, I don't want to say naturally kinky hair, with the afros and all that. I think that's a great way for a teacher who's coming into the profession to really look at that and say, yo, that's a great way to intersect or interject the kids' energy into what we're talking about and making it, especially, unfortunately, social studies is the best profession to do that, because we can do those things. But I think that's dope. You can do that too, yeah. I mean, but just looking at that from a teacher's perspective and wisdom that you're giving them in that verse, I think that if they really pay attention to it, I think those are great interjection points to really, push lessons forward and to make it a little bit more personable to them.
Respect.
Hey, I got a question for you. And I think that's a great idea. How would you suggest a teacher does that and it not come off as though they're pandering? Right? Because I could see some people thinking that that's the reason that they're doing it, especially depending on who it is that might be doing it. How do they authentically bring that into the lesson without the audience, the kids themselves, onlookers, man, they just pandering to us? How do you do that?
So I think it's about resources, having your know-with-all of the history of such. Because once again, when you get into the history of hair and what it does for a person, self-esteem wise, that could just be one aspect of it. But then when you talk about cornrows and how they develop or quote unquote historically, how creative they were in escaping the plantation with putting the rice inside the cornrows to know where they were. Or when you go back to ancient Egypt and you're talking about Kemet and you see the Egyptians with the locks, inscribed on the tomb walls. I mean, that's a whole different historical aspect that you can just take it from there and, just tell a kid, yo, that's an ancient hairdo. When you talk about waves or when you look at the different types of hair that we've been able to, cultivate our hair a certain way and, revolutionary wise. I mean, this can go deep, and I think that's part of, and a lot of our rhymes we talked about, making it clever, making it interesting, which I'm going to get my part, but yeah, I mean, you have to, make it in that way where kids gravitate towards that information to be like a student really of what we talked about. And then I got a question for us before I forget, and I'm kind of like a rebellious kid, I guess. I went to the AP Academy the other week and they were talking about curriculum, but outside of the curriculum, do we know what our kids need outside of the curriculum? Like in our verses, what we're putting together, like is that speaking towards being curriculum driven, or is that speaking towards us being creative? You know, which is on that upper echelon of what Bloom's taxonomy, you know. So that's just a thought, but anyway.
Nice. You want to do the verse, or you want us to do the verses in order?
You might as well just go ahead and do your
Okay. All right.
Make it interesting, make it clever. The community root cause is we're all together. How to get better. The mind state of a trendsetter. The igniter of thought sprinkled with intellect. The go-getters. Firm but fair, your room, you declare and assorting the ignorant how to deal with the belligerent. Sometimes you gotta set aside your pride, let it ride. Tomorrow's a new chance to glide.
Make it interesting, make it clever. Once again, I think that as a teacher, we have to make the lessons interesting and clever for the students, because, you know, when you're doing rote memorization, when you're doing something just to fill the gaps, the kids feel that. So as a new incoming teacher, you know, my message to them would be, you know, take it a little deeper, make them think about things, make them ask the questions, make them develop a sense of curiosity about what you're trying to get across to them. So making it interesting and making it clever is something that I put into my verse. Also, the root cause is that we're all together. Once again, community. I think Rod spoke about that. When he see his kids outside of school, it's still family. And I think that's one of the things that we have to bring back into the classrooms, is that we're a community. Even inside of the school, when we're operating as such, but then even more, I think, taking it to a whole nother level outside of the school. We have to understand that, we live with one another. You know what I'm saying? We live around one another. And I think that the community piece is missing. I think that schools focus on things that they can contain inside of school, but taking it to another level of us being able to operate on business levels, on being able to operate on friendship levels, operate on, curbing the violence. We got to understand that we're still a community overall. So that's why I put that little piece in there. Also, we talked about the mind state of a trendsetter. I think that as PD, when we go to PD and they ask us questions, how do we get better as teachers? We got to always bring something of value, something of substance to the table to continue to grow and evolve. So I think that anytime we're able to do something like this, have students create a hip hop verse of their own, that enables us to bring something a little bit more valuable than what they've already lined out for us, so to speak. Taking it above and beyond, so to speak, when we talk about curriculum-wise. The spark of intellect, once again, taking it deeper. History is one of my wormholes, so when we're talking about hair, when we're talking about origin of man, when we're talking about all these things that pertain to children of color that doesn't necessarily get taught in a regular curriculum, right? Especially when we talk about institutionalized white supremacy, so to speak. We got to take it a lot deeper to help them understand that concept, but then we got to take it deeper into helping them understand who they are. Because a lot of time in the curriculum, it doesn't really touch on or be able to express who they are, where they came from, who are you? That's like one of my first questions I asked at the beginning of the year. Who are you? Like, where do you come from besides your name and all of these things? So being able to influence that or interject that into the curriculum, into the lessons, I think is imperative. And then, firm but fair, your room you declare, an assault on ignorant how to deal with the belligerent. So, hey, you gotta, ignorant is just not knowing, so how are you going to try to get across your information to these kids who don't know what you're trying to teach? How are you going to establish that relationship with them to pull them into your space to help them learn? Because what we do know is that a lot of kids are just rebellious to learning off the rip, right? So what you're going to do to drag them in to once again help them open up and then be part of that whole arena that you're trying to teach in, which is going to be what next? Cipher pedagogy. Like how you're going to invite them into that cipher to learn and become better. Also at the same time, we're going to still have those kids who just belligerent. They just they don't want to hear it. So what you going to do? So I think that's a creative teacher being able to go into that space and tap into who you are to be able to do such. And then last one, sometimes when that belligerence, you do everything you can, and this guy or this girl is just still off the wall. Some days you just gotta set aside your pride because as us as teachers, we want to go in and try to assert control. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes you just gotta let it go and then talk to them afterwards, and then hopefully tomorrow is just a better day. Then you'll be able to get across what you were trying to get across, and all of that goes back to relationship building. So
hey, so for who specifically are you talking to in your verse? It could be a person, it could be a conglomerate, it could be an entity, but specifically, like when you wrote that verse and recited it, who did you picture? Who are you speaking to?
So when we were asked to write the verse, I think it was for us to talk to new incoming teachers and advice that we would give them, and those are pieces of advice I would definitely give them.
Gotcha.
Having pride, making sure that you're making it interesting and making it clever to them, making it relevant to them. So definitely, I think that all of those things were put into that verse of the new incoming teacher. If they're just trying to figure out, because what we do know is, like, once again, when we're at Wayne State, they talk about all these things. They talk about theory and everything, but, step into the classroom was what? Totally different, so sometimes it's like they're just trying to really figure it out. So those are pieces of wisdom that I would give to that person to try to figure it out, make it a little bit personable and relationship building wise.
What is pride as a teacher? What does that look like, man? You said putting pride aside. What does a prideful teacher look like?
Putting pride aside, sometimes, like I said, when you're in there, especially you being a male, we want to have control of the classroom. Mm-hmm. We all know where it gets to that point where we have to raise our voice in order to, shut it down, right? Sometimes that might not work, right? And let's be for real. You gotta be like, then you like, what is the matter with this guy? So sometimes you gotta be like, you know what? All right, let me see what happened if I would, just lend a little bit of power to this person to see if, they can get everybody else under control. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like a mind trick. You gotta do that sometimes in order just to survive, because if not, you're gonna go into burnout mode every day. If you go in there and you try to do that every day, try to assert control every day, it's gonna throw you into burnout mode.
Rain, snow, bro, we at it wherever. Resilience, and you gotta be clever to weather whatever weather, cause they adding the pressure of academic endeavors when some don't know they letters. So here's my letter to be better. Some kids, they battle depression, emotional understanding, dog can mold them forever. Never exit kid out, under those can hold treasure. In this community we building, so we mold them together.
Alright, so I start, rain, snow, bro, we at it whenever.
Okay. Alright.
Whatever the circumstances, whatever the situation, because you're going to go through a lot. Like, me just being in the classroom, I'd have been in the classroom for my first year. I walked into McDowell. And one of the things I realized quickly is you're going to have a lot of stuff thrown at you. Like, from every direction, no lie. Like, my first day, I had kids try and bum rush me into the classroom, stole snacks up out the classroom. Like, pure hazing process. Like, I was not ready for that. But at the same time, I kind of was, because I've learned not to personalize things. Like, the moment that you start to personalize what children are doing to you, you already, like, it's troubled water at that point, because you got to still kind of remember you're dealing with 11, 12, 13. They don't even know themselves, for real. So, whatever the case may be, rain or snow, like, we gonna be there. We at it whenever, resilience, and you got to be clever. So, you got to be clever. If you can't come up with something, you gonna have to find ways to work around all the adversity that you gonna see in the classroom, especially like with me being in the middle of the hood for real. Like, I know a couple of these kids, families, and like grew up with them, hung out with them, so I know where y'all come from. Like, I didn't grow up in the best situation. Like, I had to deal with a whole lot, so it's easy for me to have empathy to them because I know what y'all are going through. So with that being said, I kind of have a bigger just pool of things I can pull from and be creative. Okay, I know this kid probably gonna react to this way. So it's like what you were saying. You can't be dominant with everybody. You can't be power tripping because some kids straight up, they're not gonna care that you raise your voice. They don't care that you bigger than them, stronger than them, none of that. Yeah. They don't care about none of that. So sometimes you got to just kind of dial that back and then be like, okay, what's another way I can talk to this person? Because in life, you can't talk to everybody assertively. You're going to get a reaction from somebody eventually that is not having it. So it's really being clever and being creative, trying to figure out a way to move around that. Let's see, to weather whatever weather, because they adding the pressure of academic endeavors when some don't know their letters. And I feel like that's pretty straightforward. Like, I can speak from experience. I have a third grader who legitimately does not know his whole alphabet. But you want him to read a book, any book. That's not going to make sense. They don't even know all the sounds to letters because they don't know all the letters. And it's almost like, how did you get to third grade? But guess what? Now that I'm getting you at third grade, this how we going to work with this. Even if you got to come to my office and we going to go over the alphabet 30 times if we need to. But eventually you going to get to that point. And I feel like we get so caught up in judging kids for what they don't know. But at the same time, like I say, you have to know where these kids come from. I grew up with a parent that had me reading, watching the Hooked on Phonics videos and all that. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Like, all of that. Like, and I had my aunties, my uncles, always, just as far as stuff you should know. Leaving out the house as a little kid, knowing your name, knowing your address, knowing what city you live in, knowing who the mayor, all of this stuff. Like, I had somebody who was every day on my head every single day. So when I go to school, I'm going to know my letters. I'm going to know my name. I'm not, when the teacher asks me what my name is, I'm not going to say, oh, my name is Mike. I'm going to say my name is Michael Siebert. Or if it's abbreviated, I had a kid named, that's strange. But that's what it is. So once we understand like what level these kids really at, like what level they really on, I feel like then we can create a more personalized way of approaching them, because every kid is different, especially when they coming from these communities where education may not be something that's held to a high standard. Because if I grew up seeing dope boys all the time and they're the only ones around me who got money, they might not even know all they alphabets for all I know. But all I know is they got money. Like, for real. Like, all I know is they got money. And I'm growing up around everything dilapidated. I'm seeing houses. I'm on the street where it's about 5 houses that actually got people in them, but it's 25 houses on the street. That's crazy. So, yeah, let's see. Moving forward. I said, so here's my letter to be better. Some kids, they battle depression, emotional understanding, dog, can mold them forever. Depression is so real. Like, see, I don't even want to get emotional talking about it because that shit hit me a little hard. Like, I remember growing up being depressed, like actually trying. Like, I didn't even want to talk about it because I didn't even feel like I could talk to my OG at the time. That's how I started writing. Like, writing started because of that, because I was like, I ain't got nobody to talk to. But rapping was like the one way I could articulate myself, share what I was thinking, all that stuff. So, yeah, man, emotional understanding. Like, if I just would have had somebody around me, like I was trying to navigate all that myself. Yeah. So if I would have had somebody around me like, oh, no, Mike not cutting up because, you know, he just a bad kid. Like, dog is struggling on the inside, like that internal battle. So I feel like that right there is what so many of our kids need, especially from the hood. I empathize with them the most, for real, because I really know what that's like. Really know what that's like to just be a kid trying to understand things that don't make no sense to you. You don't get why people take drugs and crackheads passed out on the street and seeing syringes in the street. Like, how do a second, third grader know how to rationalize that? just growing up, like parents don't want you to go nowhere because your neighborhood's so dangerous, and in your head you just, I want to go outside and have fun. Why can't I go around the corner with my friends who going around the corner? Well, because if we let you go around the corner, you might not make it. You might not come back. Because I remember a little girl being found right at the corner, right where the Cubs play, in the high grass, because they wasn't cutting the grass. And this little girl had been there for weeks. So emotional understanding, it can mold them forever. Sometimes they need that. They need somebody who they can talk to. If they know they can talk to you about stuff like that, you'll be surprised how many kids go through stuff like that. It'll throw you off. It'd be heartbreaking, but at the same time, I feel like that's kind of why I was put in this position, because I can holler at y'all. XYZ may not be trying to hear it. I get why you could care less about Pythagorean's theorem right now. I really do. Let's see. Emotional understanding can mold them forever and never X a kid out. Under those can hold treasure. When I wrote that, like, it's this book, and it's by Carl Jung, and one of the things I like about Carl Jung, he real good at like using archetypes. So like he'll take, like, he was real big in his studies. He combined like Eastern mysticism with like Western intellectualism, if that makes sense. Like he wanted to kind of mold the two and say, like when he analyzed dreams and stuff, this is what this symbolically can mean, et cetera, et cetera. And so with that being said, you don't X nobody up, because X marks the spot. We know that's where we find treasure at. You X a kid out, you never know what that kid can become. Malcolm X, from what I was told, was a gangster before he was Malcolm X. So for real, like you can never X anybody out, because a lot of the times all they take is that one person. All they take is that one person. Oh yeah, in this community we building, so we mold them together. We in this together. We all sitting at this table together. This is not an individual thing. It's not one person can change the entirety of anything by themselves. Like, you need a community. No matter how much you try, nobody's Superman. And just because you throw on your cape, guess what? If you jump out that window, I bet gravity wins. So with that being said, we all superheroes in our own way. But even the Avengers had to team up. Even the Justice League had to team up. So for something as serious as what we dealing with education, especially black education, dealing with our black boys and our black girls, we deal with a whole different reality of things, especially being like from the hood. Like that's where my passion lies, for real, because I know how messed up we are. Like, I know for a fact how messed up we are. So yeah, as far as the verse, that's what it is. That's what it is.
For you, Mike.
What's good?
Think back to when how did Quan called you, text you? How did he communicate with you for this?
For this right here, what we doing right now?
For the verse, for the construction of the verse.
I want to say, you text me? I mean, text, call, everything.
When he called you, when you got that communication, what went through your mind? Like, to get that out of your pen, what went through your mind? What was that first thought? What was it?
Man, everything for me is like personal. Like, so I think about a lot of my, like, just growing up, because that's how I approach all this. Like, I wasn't necessarily trained traditionally or like went to school for this how others have. So everything I do is all personal experience. How can I take that personal experience and put it into the verse? So for me, when I was writing the verse, it's just, I know what I would have liked growing up, being in school and whatnot. I know I needed that emotional understanding. I know I wish I wasn't never X'd out, because I remember hearing teachers telling me I was going to be this, I was going to be that. I remember being in 5th grade and they had us write a paper on what we wanted to be when we grow up. And I wrote that I was probably going to be dead or in jail, and believed it. You couldn't convince me that wasn't the case, because I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was going to school and doing. I know it was some days where, oh yeah, I went to school, but I didn't stay in school. I walked away because I had something else I was doing in the same neighborhood. So, yeah, when I approached the verse, it was mainly just, it was almost like me talking to myself. But I know it's so many other people in my situation. Like, it's a lot of people being thrown into these classrooms that are not ready. Like, they are not prepared for what they actually gonna see and experience. And a lot of them, especially if they ain't grew up in that situation, they're gonna have no idea. How do you tell a kid, an 8th grader who working in a chop shop, to stop working in a chop shop? He don't even got nobody at home telling him to stop working in a chop shop. So you think as a teacher, you about to walk in here and then brand new to the school, you about to just tell him, oh yeah, you need to do X, Y, and Z? Bro, come on now. You pulled up here in an E class. You pulled in the parking lot in an E class. And you telling me stop working at a chop shop? I want an E class too. I want to be in too. So yeah, it's real personal. Everything, like every verse I write is personal. I feel like my best writing has always come from what I've personally went through.
I wanted to ask you, man, you know, dealing with students, you saying this is something that you wish you had, and so you provide students with the services that you wish you had, the open ear, the big brother that you wish you had, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you do now, though, man? You know, like, because I know dealing with, you know, we all can say, like, when we're working with students, it's something that we take home, you know, something that we may think about, you know, it may have an impact on us. So what do you do now, like, when you deal with, you may have thoughts of depression, or you may have like overly concerned about something that happened at school or whatever. How do you deal with those issues now?
I create a time and a space for me to decompress. Like I need it. Like I could get home late. Like, let's just say it's one of those days at the school. I ain't left until 7, 8 o'clock. I don't care how tired I am. About 30 minutes to an hour when I get home, it's going to be me decompressing, whether it's me playing the game, writing, reading a book, just talking to somebody that cares about me. Like, you got to kind of find them spaces to set for yourself, because we've been talking about teacher burnout. Like, that's real. I know I experienced it my first year in the classroom. Like, dog, when is this gonna be over? I'm so over this. But I wasn't really creating those spaces at that time, so I'm just going to bed mad, waking up mad, gotta walk back into the school and just like checking myself, as opposed to, now that I didn't created that space for myself, that time slot, no matter what is going on, Mike, you are taking 1 hour to yourself to do whatever it is that you need to do. Then that's what I'm gonna do. Because a lot of that stuff be heavy. I done heard some of the craziest stuff. I'm talking y'all good. If y'all need anything, talk to me. If it's in my power to do, then I'm going to do it. It's multifaceted. It's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways you can go about it. I feel like you got to understand yourself to know what that answer is, to like decompress. Because if you don't know yourself, I'm simple. I like video games. I can go home and decompress over 30 minutes of Mortal Kombat. Like, for real. And be good. But yeah, so
don't try to do it all. Take time to pause, breathe, recognize there's many down for the cause. No stars, just terrestrial, down to earth professional. Community and parents, a trifecta of caring. You're not alone. Some set in motion, some keep it going. Some plant, some water, when the seeds are growing. No muck mode, no Rambo, no Dolo. Too daunting of a task to handle alone. So let's go. Let's go.
So I start off by saying, don't try to do it all. Take time to pause, breathe, recognize there's many down for the cause. One of the things that happens, I know it happened to me, and I was really talking to myself, is that we get into these positions, especially being a black man at a school. You feel like you need to do all the different things, all the needs there. You need to do it, and one of the mistakes I made is that I didn't think that nobody else wanted to be bothered. So I was like, I ain't gonna ask nobody nothing. I'm just gonna do it myself. And what I know that leads to, that can lead to a quick burnout, but also leads to a lot of resentment. If you the person that's like doing this stuff and you be like, man, ain't nobody else doing, and you kind of get upset with people, and they don't even know, because you didn't ask them, and you just automatically, think that, I got to do all this and nobody else want to do it. And so that brings up the part where it says, pause for a minute, get out of that type of thinking. You got to recognize that there's a lot of people inside of the school and out of the school that's down for the cause of student success, and just with my, when I started asking for help, like, it was just so many people in the school, outside of the school, that was like, yeah, let's do this, and I think that's one of the things, especially as a man, you don't want to ask for help. You know what I'm saying? And so being able, like with Brian and what Rob was saying, talking about put ego aside, putting pride aside, like, because this is a endeavor that no one person or no one set group of people can do it. It has to be everybody that's involved, and so that's what I meant by recognize there's many down for the cause, and they say no stars, it's just terrestrial, down to earth professionals, community, parents, the professionals, the community, and the parents. That's a trifecta of caring. And so what that means is that it's not just educators. It's we educators are a part of the community. Parents. Rod said that students are our relatives. And that's the way it is. It was a book that I was reading called "The Price They Paid" by Vivian Morris Gunn, and she talked about the schools in Trenholm, Alabama. Now, this school in particular was built like in 1870. So it's like 10 years after slavery, 5 years after slavery ended, and you had this group of ex-enslaved people who, I'm pretty sure many were illiterate. They took their land, their money, and they put together the funds and the land that was needed to create a school. And this started off as like an elementary school, ended up going all the way into high school, and so they paid for the teachers. They paid, and they produced like all kind of successful students, right? The school ended. It was closed like right after Brown versus Board of Education, but they had a reunion like in 1980, and somebody had to, the foresight to interview these people, right? Because they were old, it's like, let's interview them and talk about the school. And one of the questions they asked, what made this school so successful? And they talked about that trifecta. It's like, man, we had a caring community. We had teachers that cared, our parents. Now look at what they did. They created this school out of there. You know what I'm saying? They knew they was preparing for the future. And so that's what it is. Now that's that whole trifecta of care, that we're not just, teachers are not just an isolated group. We are part of a larger ecosystem. And if you take anything, or if you take something out of the ecosystem, it dies. You know what I'm saying? Or if and so we all have to work together, the community, parents, and as well as us as educators. You're not alone. Some set in motion, some keep it going, some plant, some water when the seeds are growing. And so, and this goes back to, that's actually a Bible verse. I think it's in Corinthians. Paul was talking about how, you had some people who's like, well, I like this particular person, and then somebody else like, well, no, I like this person, and Paul is like, listen, we all working towards the same goal. Some may plant, some may water, but God brings the increase. And so that's, whether you in the school, you're going to have people like, well, I like this teacher better, or I like this, it's like, there's no stars, there's no, if they like you, that's cool, it's in divine order, right? And I may have some students that gravitate towards me, you may have some students that gravitate towards you, but if we are working for the same goal, it's going to be an increase of success. And and this whole rant is for me. No monk mode, no Rambo, no Dolo. That's me all the time. When I first started teaching, that was me. I was going into monk mode where I'm not talking to people. I'm to myself. I'm Dolo. I'm doing. You see me coming to the school. I'm just dealing with the kids. I'm not talking to anybody else. And so that's me. No monk mode, no Rambo, no Dolo, because it's too daunting of a task to handle alone. Right, so let's go together, right? And so that's all that is. Yeah, all of that is all that was directed towards me. Like that's what I would be telling a younger teacher, but that's really what I'm telling me as a new teacher. Like, look, these are all the things you can do, but don't be selfish. Like, you're being a selfish servant. Think about that. You're serving selfishly. What that means is that you're trying to do it all yourself, where you can really open it up and Brian may want to get some of that. You ain't ask him. Kente might want some. You ain't ask him. You know what I'm saying? The parents might want to come in and do some stuff. You ain't ask them. Community members. And so when everybody's working together, you know, we have just like in Trenholm, Alabama, you have a very thriving and growing, successful ecosystem of care for our young people.
Hey, Quan, other than your verse, which other verse spoke to you?
Now, I like everybody's verses, but I think, you know, what Rod was saying and what Brian was saying, especially about letting ego, I said it before about putting ego aside, putting pride aside, you know, and that's the biggest thing, because we can be, I mean, I've been to that. I've been in that space where it's like, oh, they disrespecting me, dog. Like, it's a war. No, you ain't gonna disrespect. You ain't getting out of, you're not getting out here with that disrespect, you know. Right. And it's like, you know, you gotta put that aside. Like, you know, these are kids that's gonna make mistakes. And, you know, of course, I ain't saying to abandon discipline, but, you know, you can abandon ego with your discipline, you know, with your discipline actions, whatever. And so, putting pride aside, you know, if a student say, well, you know, I remember I used to feel like that. I was like, man, I'm the black man in the building, and the black boy want to go and talk to the, you know, the female teacher or to the white teacher. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you know, I'm feeling kind of proud about that. Why they not talking? Why this one in particular not talking to me? You know, and it's like, you know, got to put that pride aside. You know.
What was the time? What was the time that y'all realized, like, oh dang, I can use my talent to really connect? Did any of y'all have kind of like that epiphany, or the reason y'all keep the art going? Any thoughts?
I don't think that it's an epiphany. I think it's deeply ingrained in our individual identities. I think that writing rhymes, performing songs, and things of that nature is something that is grounded in how we define ourselves and our experiences. It happens over and over and over. I think all of us share the experiences where we were young, and through writing songs and things of that, we were discovering things about ourselves. And so at this juncture, writing songs, performing songs, it gives us a release from some of the other identities that we have to hold on to, you know, as being fathers, as being husbands, as being leaders, as being community activists, you know, and things of that nature. It gives us the ability to kind of, I get a relief from doing this, from performing this. And I see how even when we put each other in uncomfortable positions, let's say that, okay, we got to write a song right now, today. Even when we go about it like that, or even when we kind of doing this, you know, these battles about, do you want to try to do it over? Do you want to do it again? It's that from an engineer's perspective, all of that is reflected in what we do as teachers as well. All of it is the same. It's the same kind of process. And I think also the process of continuing to recognize that it is growth. We will never stop improving as MCs or as artists. And we carry that same ethic into what we do from an educational standpoint and from a leadership standpoint. Period.
That's the next song, but on the cyber pedagogy, you said there's a resemblance between the MC and the educator.
There is. What's the difference? There is no difference. Like an MC has to, when we think about great MCs are able to not only be deft in terms of what they do with content, but they're able to make connections with people. You know, we connect with, you know, people connected with DMX. DMX was not, you know, the most lyrically, technically sound, flipping his tongue, this, that, and the third, but he connected with people because people understood his story and understood where he came from. And teachers are the same way. Teachers have to, first of all, teaching is a performative thing anyway. A large amount of what teachers do is performative and bringing people in and giving people information and making people feel something. But also, they have to continue to build and develop their craft. People talk a lot about Jay-Z. People talk a lot about Drake and this, that, and the third, about how they're always shifting and changing and growing and trying different things that they may have seen somebody else do, but they're doing it and they're adding their own twist. And I think teachers got to do the same thing. So for me, every teacher is an MC. Every teacher ain't a great teacher. Every MC ain't a great MC. But to be great, you have to continue to grow. You have to be able to speak to people's spirit, and you got to be technically sound as well. And I think we can't, as much as we talking about relationships and things, you know, things of that nature, we still have to make sure that teachers, from a pedagogical and a practical way, that they're teaching, that they're assessing, that they're responding to assessment, that they're checking for understanding, that they're, you know, opening lessons in ways that when we talking about the coiling of the hair and stuff like that, we could even have them talking about, why did you choose to grow your hair out? And having them explore that, because that helps them dig deeper into their own identity. And I think the better job we do at getting people to confront the things that grow their identity, the better and more open they are to learning new things that they can bring and make a part of who they are.
It's funny that you said that about performance. I used to hate that. Like I used to say that sometimes in my class. Like, I got to come in here and perform, and I'm not a performer. I'm a teacher. But now I embrace it, though. Growing with the knowledge and wherewith, and inside my circle, and all of the things that I've been able to instill within myself or practice and reflect upon things. Now I'm like, okay, I'm a performer. I'll be the performer today. It might require me to act a certain way this way today, and opposed to yesterday's lesson. But yeah, I used to hate that at first, but now I embrace it. I totally understand what you're saying. It's like, that was just funny.
No, I was just going to say, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, like, and Rod, like the emceeing and can you hear me? Okay. The emceeing and the performance part, that's like, I always think of it as like, because I forgot who said it, but sometimes in the profession you kind of compare, like, man, they get all the kids' attention and and they and I just think about like the difference between, somebody just brought up DMX and Jay-Z and a Tribe and Busta Rhymes. Like, Busta Rhymes and Jay-Z can both move the crowd, but totally different performance style, totally different theatrics, but everybody is on either the edge of their seats or standing, like, just capturing every moment. And that's how I envision how classrooms should be, like, the edge of your seat, capturing every moment, trying to find the quotable that I can recite, you know what I mean? Because I think that those are the moments that are life-changing, when you can, like, goosebumps. Bro, I can't believe that Busta Rhymes just flipped it like that, and Jay-Z's just like, blah, 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 blah. No theatrics at all. You know what I mean? But everybody, that's it. Everybody selling out stadiums. You know what I mean? And I think that when teachers understand, when they get to that point that they understand their influence in the classroom and authentically be yourself, give them the high quality content with that passion behind it, I think that is like the transformative part of teaching and learning.
Yo, being yourself, like, honestly, that's probably what has helped me more than anything. Like, I don't look like a traditional teacher. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to be fly. I'm probably going to be wearing some J's. You going to catch me at certain events. Yes, I'm going to have my chains on, all that. Nice watches. Guess what? They into all that stuff too. But how crazy is it to see, wait a minute, but he walking into a school like this, everybody else rappers. Wait a minute, so I could be in the school and still be fly? I can still do this and still be fly? Yes, absolutely you can. And anybody who try and judge you for it, guess what? Your substance gonna back up everything else. Because I can walk into a school, you might judge me and think, he this, he that. And then you walk into my house and see I got a library with over 200 books in it. Just because I walked in looking like a rapper, that's not all there is to me at all. So being yourself, kids always gonna rock with that. I've seen teachers go in try and not be themselves and oh my God, swing and a miss. Swing and a miss. So like I've seen teachers crash and burn behind that, not even make it through the school year, because them kids gonna see that as phony. And one thing you can't do with our kids is be phony.
So before I became a teacher, I had been recording and rapping and emceeing and stuff, and I always hated performing. Like I was a studio rapper. Like I hated getting on the stage. Mike, we talk about that all the time.
That kind of
I hated getting on the stage. But what made me a better performer was when I became a teacher.
Yes.
you know, it made me comfortable with speaking to crowds and stuff like, you know, across the board. And so, yeah, so mine was in reverse. Like, you know, teaching made me, you know, want to perform, made me, you know, a better performer as somebody that's on stage. And so, so I felt that, like, I was like, you know, like, if you see like some early performances of Mad Prophets, like, you see me in the back, you know, I'd be like, dog, I'm not performing, like, you know, yeah, and you know, everybody else is animated. I'm like, man, I ain't performing for this crowd. Yeah. But that all kind of changed once I got into the classroom.
If I was talking to my younger self, I'd do some things differently. Step into the mantle of teaching, cause it was meant to be. Choose words wisely, you there to inspire. They learn from who they like, so they have to admire the truth from lies. You have to distinguish. You light a flame that's so bright that no one can extinguish. So what's the meaning? All the difference between us, a veteran from a novice, is the patience in teaching. Not the race, but the sequence and the content I'm teaching. We can take on the world, there's no way that can beat us. The genius is that I'm teaching, yo, no one can defeat us. Gotta emerge triumphantly, the one who will lead us. Alright, so when Quan, I actually started writing this like literally minutes after Quan told me about the concept. So when he told me that, the concept was speaking to a younger teacher or a newer teacher, someone new to the profession, I kind of went through memory lane of some of what I went through as a new teacher. So it starts off, if I was talking to my younger self, I do some things differently. Step into the mantle of teaching like it was meant to be. So I've always been a relatively confident teacher. I've never thought that I did not have the ability to impart knowledge into my students. But I would have been a little more confident, a little more ready. So it's just kind of messaging to newer teachers, don't take it for granted. Don't think that you're going to identify with your kids automatically. Make sure you are well read. Make sure you are prepared, because they deserve it. Yeah. So the kids deserve it. You know, we don't want just when the lights flip, this is the first time you've tried this material. Right. You know, we want to make sure that you put your work in and that you're ready to go. Choose your words wisely. You're there to inspire. They learn from who they like, so they have to admire. So me, Rod, and Quan had a conversation. And this is actually from a lived experience to where, you know, as a younger teacher, maybe a year into the job, I had a student who I didn't think was being his authentic self. And, you know, I expressed what I thought were some improvements that he needed to make. And I felt like what I was saying was authentic and genuine. But I think the way it was phrased, I could have been a little more tactful. And so you got to choose your words wisely, because the impact I was trying to have man, you are good enough as you are. You don't have to act like the other kids that's in the class. I know that's not you. I see that's not you. You don't have to act that way. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. And that's all meant to uplift and build up. But the way it came out, you know, I realized later that it was really firm. Because that kid's grandfather came to talk to me about his grades, his attendance, and everything else. And in that conversation, he wove in the opportunity to say, yeah, you know, he said the other day you said to him something. And even when the grandfather said it, I stuck to him. Yeah, I said it because, you know, and I wasn't disrespectful at all. I was young. I was overconfident in that moment. But the grandfather circled back to it again. And the grandfather was basically like, I know what you were trying to say, but I'm just telling you how it impacted him. When he got home, he shared what you shared, and I said, okay, to himself, this is the grandfather speaking, maybe the teacher meant X, Y, and Z, which I did, but the way it landed to the kid, man, it had a reverse effect. So, you know, just inspiring younger teachers, choose your words wisely, be careful what you say, because what you're trying to do and what you're actually doing might be working against one another. The truth from lies, you have to distinguish. You light a flame that's so bright that no one can extinguish. So, you know, a lot of times when we're teaching content, be it history, be it ELA, some of what we are charged to teach is not actual or factual. So you kind of have to distinguish when you're teaching these things. You have to kind of filter, or better yet, empower the students to be able to filter what's truthful, what's not so truthful, so that they can take away what they're supposed to take away from the lesson. So that's one aspect of it. And that flame, that's inspiring. You know, you have to inspire them so that they can go out and inspire others. So what's the meaning or the difference in teaching? I'm sorry. So what's the meaning or the difference between us, a veteran from a novice, is the patience in teaching? So these lessons, they don't always unfold at the timeline we think they should. You know, pacing. Think about this from an instructional standpoint. You got a pacing guide. And the pacing guide might say that this particular standard should be taught in this particular time frame. And the time frame in which this standard should be taught might be here. But the patience that it takes to teach this standard to mastery might actually span this wide. So you got to be really patient, you got to be really strategic, and you got to really make sure that you're not just rushing through because it may not be landing the way it needs to land. Not the race, but the sequence and the content I'm teaching. We can take on the world. No one can beat us. So that is the teacher and the students being on the same accord. So we in this together. Like, even if it's, mildly competitive, my class versus your class, or my school versus your school, but, a teacher has to build that camaraderie with their students so that the students are, they're not only trying to satisfy themselves, but there's a sense and pride in this whole class succeeding. And them seeing the whole class do good. That's the teacher, that's themselves, that's their classmates, so on and so forth. And that becomes infectious, so that should be inspiring to others as well. The geniuses that I'm teaching, no one can defeat us. Gotta emerge triumphantly, the one who will lead us. So that's not me, right? I'm the one that's leading this lesson, but someone from this lesson that I'm leading has to emerge triumphantly to continue to lead us. That passing of the torch, that proverbial passing of the torch. So think about the Quan and the Mikes of the world, how Mike is Quan's former student. So somewhere in Quan's class, or in his classes, as the leader, he inspired Mike to be a leader that emerged in that class. So I think that all of us as teachers have to inspire that. And not necessarily inspire the next teacher, but inspire that leader that's going to lead someone or something to overall success. Just inspiring the next generation of leaders. That's what that last line, got to emerge triumphantly, the one who will lead us. So as a teacher in the class that you're teaching, inspiring someone or someones within that class to be the next leader or leaders, and not necessarily to be the next teacher, but to lead, to be a leader of men or a leader of people. That passing of the torch, if you will.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for you. You recorded that part of the video with your son.
Oh yeah.
What was the significance of that?
Oh, that was special, man. That was special, man. And so my son had actually. So even going back to the previous song, the first song, which was 4 years ago. So my son is 11 right now. So 4 years ago he was 7. He knew all of our parts, right? At 7 years old. So that's pretty remarkable. When Alan asked the question about how do we basically at our old age remain in tune and so dope, and to be able to reach the younger generation, that's important. And a lot of times that we think of the younger generation as the high school age students that we're teaching. But in that case, we're talking about a 7-year-old. Today, we're talking about the same kid who's 11. So he had learned all of our parts. And he knew the different inflections and how I would transition. He would rap it when it would come on. So in rehearsing for the video, I would play it over and over and over in the car. He would hear it over and over and over again, so he would recite it. So for this video, same thing. And so in playing the song over and over, he learned the part to where he had rehearsed it to be in the video. I was like, man, what would be dope, man, is if, particularly since I'm saying, if I was talking to my younger self, I'd do some things differently. It's like, man, I want to see that out of him. I want to see him recite that part. And so, but the way it manifested in the video was me rapping to him. And so him standing there. And so that was important, man. That was, and if you remember when we recorded the video, it didn't, I wasn't sure that part would make it in. So at each time we pause, I'm like, hey, Quan, dog, we gonna be able to, hey, Quan, hey, talk to Alan, man, see if he could, hey, see if we, I'm looking at my wife like, man, and I'm hearing cues like we about to rap, and this is, I'm like, no, we gotta. So by the time we got to a part, I was like, okay, this is it. And so he stepped up, he was ready, man, and that, like I said, man, that was special to me. So good question. Appreciate that. But one last question. So Quan, this is for Quan and for Rod. So, Rod, you engineered this, man, and suffice it to say, the order in which we recorded the verses and the order in which the verses were aligned were not the same. So, whoever recorded whenever, but the way you lined it up, like, what was the art in that, or what was the motivation in that?
I believe that it's a certain divinity in all this that we do, and so. You know, as we put the song together, there were parts that just kind of fit like a puzzle. The beat gave a certain energy and a certain urgency where I think everybody kind of came, you know, when people came with their verses, it was very, very serious because we all, and I don't think it was a difficult song for any of us to write, to be honest. It felt that way. But in terms of putting things where they belong, I did feel as though, you know, Buff kind of opening it up. When we did that song at Grove, we were just kind of there. We just kind of wrote it, and then I wrote mine at home, and I added it. And then, you know, when you know, Quan came to my house and added his, when he sent me his, I didn't even know it was him. Like, because it was so unique. But what I valued about it was, he came at a juncture where the energy was just skyrocketing. You know what I'm saying? And then breaking his part down, what he was saying was profound. It was so profound that I felt like it needed to be heard. And then obviously, when you kind of summarized everything by saying, you know, emerge triumphantly, the one who will lead us, it kind of just summarized everything. And then obviously, you know, Ferguson Bay blessing us at the end. You know what I'm saying? It was divine. It wasn't, I don't think anything is by mistake. I think that everything kind of happens the way it's supposed to happen. And in engineering these songs, you know, over time, not just these, I just see how it becomes a spiritual experience for me. And it just, now it's something that can live eternally. So I appreciate that question, though.
It's crazy you said that because I was listening to the new one, and then Quan, you sent the first one, and then you sent the second one with Quan's on that. I'm like, that's Quan right there. I'm like, he sounds a little bit different.
Yeah.
But he sounds, I mean, like the energy level, like it's like elevated, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's fire, like, yo.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
I appreciate the fact that we capture the ethic within hip hop involving it being competitive in a way, but it's extremely collaborative. You know, and as I just value having the opportunity to say, you know, I think you can do that better. Or I think, and it's not a situation where, you know, because I run into situations where you had those kind of conversations and people like, oh, he hating on me. I'm the engineer. What you talking about? Like, I'm trying to I have to do this. And it's the same as teaching. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
I just want to add, too, when you talked about, when you asked the question about how do we remain relevant or to, and how do we keep evolving as we're getting older, I think we take it back to the students and we talk about the culture of hip hop. A lot of times we just get lost in the music, the aspect of it. But understanding that this was a whole cultural movement. And once again, I know Rod is putting that in his PhD, and he's talking about the importance of us being able to educate our kids on the cultural aspect of what hip hop has done, you know, and continues to do, and continues to grow exponentially.
Absolutely.
You know, when we talk about like next year, I think b-boying is going to be an Olympic sport. So when we talk about the evolution of hip hop, that has to be a topic of conversation for our students, just to understand, you know, the whole cultural significance of what it started as and what it's growing to and how it's continuing to manifest. So that's very important, and I think that's what we do in our classes. We use every aspect of hip hop that we've attached ourselves to, and you know, we go in, we educate them, and at the same time, it's a great creativity tool where we let them be creative with it. So
I mean,
think that's very important.
It's definitely a pedagogy. It's definitely a teaching framework in terms of teaching, not only teaching the collaboration, not only being able to make everything relevant. As MCs, everything got to be relevant. We can't just get on the mic if we want to be salient with people and just talk randomness. You know what I'm saying? Unless that's the expectation, we have to find ways to be relative to people, and then also always having that element of social critique involved in what we do. I mean, you could take the only gangster rapper who never said nothing about the upliftment of black people was probably Spice One. You know, every song was I'm killing, blah blah. But at the same time, there has to be a social consciousness in everything that we do, and I think the majority of MCs see that, and I think we have to make sure everything we do as teachers involves that social critique as well.